Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's me, Josh again. How you doing? I know it's been a while since I've last uploaded a video, but in this video I want to talk about negative thoughts and how the impacts can affect us and lead us to like anxiety, depression, or addiction. Now, the thing I'm going to start with, and I actually got this off a website called cognitivetherapyguide.org, just as a reference point. And all the information in this video will help you to be able to think about your thoughts, your negative thoughts, and how to turn them into positive thoughts. So there are 4 types of negative thinking. The first type that I'm going to cover is the most common one. It has the most information on it, but all the commonalities that this has links to all the different types of negative thinking. So the first one is all or nothing thinking. It's basically saying, I have to do things perfectly because anything less than perfect is a failure. Well, no, it's not actually. It doesn't. All or nothing thinking is not good. Like, it's just not good in your work environment, your home environment, or even, just out in the regular world. This on itself, it can lead to anxiety, depression, and addiction. So let's talk about the effects that it has on the anxiety. Well, the anxiety effects, basically, they have leads to any mistakes which you count as a failure. It may expose you to criticism or judgment. Therefore, you don't give yourself permission to relax, and you just basically you let your guard down, which means that you can't protect yourself. And by letting your guard down, it also leads to depression, where you got to thinking you have to be perfect. You feel trapped by your own unrealistic expectations. Sorry, I'm reading off the paper, but this is just how I'm going to do my video. You guys are important. Trapped by your own unrealistic expectations. Unrealistic expectations could be anything from, this has to be perfect all the time, or they won't like me the way they see me, and they won't like me for me. But that is something that leads to addiction, because the anxiety or depression feels so uncomfortable. You may turn to drugs or alcohol to escape. Is that what you want? Do you want to lead to the drugs and alcohol to get an escape from your life, or do you want to learn to be able to turn your life around in a positive manner where you can turn your thinking around and be like, look, okay, these negative thoughts are going through my head, but I don't have to listen to them. Therefore, that leads me to the next one. It is disqualifying the positives. Life's like one disappointment after another. Well, yeah, sometimes that is the case. Sometimes it is one disappointment after another, but it doesn't. Feelings don't have. Well, let me rephrase it. That's how you feel, and therefore and it goes into your thoughts up here, where it shouldn't be. It's not allowed there. Life doesn't have to feel like it's one failure after another. Okay, because if that's how it turns out, then ask yourselves: is that true? What am I doing in my thought life that is making me think like this? That is leading me to these rash decisions. So I want us to think about this as a circle. Now, in this circle, it's clear. It's a clear circle. So think of a circle that has nothing in it. That circle will be your thought process. Now, as you think of negative thoughts, I want you to imagine the circle getting full and full and full and full, and basically the inside of the circle becomes black. And in that blackness, that's what can lead us down to the depression, the anxiety, the mental breakdowns, the addictions, you name it. That's what it is. But when you start changing your thinking to positive thinking, the blackness gets less and less and less and less and less and less and less, until it becomes this one clear circle again. I'm not going to use the word perfect, but a clear circle. So that is just something that's just one thing that can help. Let's just think of Just think of your mind like a circle and think of it getting black. And the more and more black it gets, the more problems it's going to cause. So let's move on. The next one is negative self-labeling. Like, I feel like a failure. I'm flawed. If people knew me, they wouldn't like me. Well, sometimes we have a problem with how we do things, and I don't really have much on that, but if I wanted to say anything, I could say this. Sometimes it doesn't matter how other people feel about us, and it doesn't matter how they think we are. If we're okay with ourselves, it should be good enough. But if we can find a bunch of people who can be like, hey man, yeah, show us the real you, or other people you can trust because of that hurt, it's not bringing out who you really are, well, we need to find the people who we can trust and who can help us to bring out who we really are. Now, let's move on to the next one. I'm going to have a bit of difficulty pronouncing this, so just forgive me, right? Catastrophizing type of thinking. Like, if something is going to happen, it'll probably be the worst case scenario. Well, it doesn't always have to be the worst case scenario now, does it? It's just something that we build into ourselves because we are so used to this that we don't know any other way of life. That's why I'm doing this video, so I can show you to be able to make a positive statement plan and just write it down and teach yourself to think and turn those negative thoughts into positive thoughts, like, oh yeah, I'm a failure. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not actually a failure. I think this because of this situation. Okay? All or nothing thinking is the most common type of negative thinking and is the main cause of many problems, including anxiety and addiction. Now, I've already covered these 3 points for all or nothing thinking. Let's go to the next part. How to turn negative thoughts around. So, there's going to be 10 of these steps. So let's go to the first step. Number 1. The situation. Briefly describe the situation you would have liked to have handled better. This will help you remember it later on. If you want to review your notes, that is. So like take it down. What did I do and how can I handle it better? For example, I made a mistake at home, I felt anxious, and I was reminded of past failures. That's just an example. Write down how you felt about a certain situation that happened to you. It doesn't have to be at home, it can be anywhere pretty much. Alright, let's move on to the next stage. The initial thought. What was the first thought that popped into your mind? This is or was probably a subconscious or automatic thought that you have had before. Example, I feel like a failure if people knew the real me. They wouldn't like me. Well, like I said, initial thought or the first thought that popped up into your head, or it's just basically an automatic thought that's just there from years and years of it can be, I don't just want to say neglect or hurt, but it is part of it. It is part of negative thinking. There are so many things I could cover, but if I do this, it'll end up being a 20-minute video or a half an hour video, and we don't want that. Number 3, negative thinking. Identify the negative thinking behind your initial thought. So what the first initial thought that you had, let's just use an example. Let's just take it one day at a time, one negative thought at a time. What is that initial thought that you have had that has turned you to think negatively? Like for example, you were showing a friend who you were, and they ended up making fun of you and calling you a loser or a moron or something like that, and instantaneously it made you feel bad, anxious, depressed, and it just made you not want to go out into society. It wanted to make you into this fake person who you are, or who actually you're not. It turns you into a fake person, and you don't want that because it affects your life and you want to be as real as possible. There are a lot of people out in the world like that, but a lot of people won't admit it because they don't have the correct people in their life who they can trust, or they don't have enough people that they can trust that they can actually be themselves around. Let's move on to step number 4. What is the source of negative belief? Can you trace your thinking back to a situation or person? Is there a deep belief or fear driving your thinking? For this one, you just need to search. You need to search your heart. What is that negative thought or situation or person or your deep belief that is driving your negative thinking? Like, one example, this is from the actual website itself. I can hear the voice of my parent or my parents saying that I'm a failure and that I'll never amount to anything. Don't believe that, because everybody can amount to something in their life. They have the potential. They have that potential to be able to be like, yeah, let's do this, because there is a job and there is a purpose for everybody on the planet. You will amount to something if you want to put in the hard work. If you want to put in the hard work and you also want to get over the negative thoughts, you go, all right, let's go from here. Let's start off here and slowly get over to the point where we want to be able to think positively and we will feel better. Now, you see, a lot of people, and trust me, I know a lot of people think that if they can just get their thoughts changed or their feelings changed like now, that they will be okay as soon as possible. But it doesn't work like that. It takes time and it takes work and it takes the willingness to be like, I have a problem. I think negatively of myself. I have an addiction. I feel depressed and I have anxiety from this. I want to get help and I want to change the way I think. Next one. Step number 5. Challenge your thinking. Look at the evidence both for and against your thinking. Have you been in a similar situation before? What did you learn from it? What strengths do you bring to this situation? Make sure you see the whole picture. The example for this one is, I'm hard on myself. I don't always succeed, but I do sometimes. People have complimented me on my work. I feel overwhelmed when I try to be perfect. Now, sometimes situations like this, like the challenge your thinking. Sometimes we don't know that that's where our thinking. Because remember from the fourth part, the fourth step, the step before this one, it can be automatic. That we have to think that, that just because people are complimenting us, that we have to do good all the time. That if we're not doing perfect all the time, we're going to fail and they're just not going to like us and we're not going to get the praise. Well, this is hard work. We don't have to be good all the time. We're not robots. We're not machines. There is a process to everything. But having to be perfect all the time can cause people a lot of stress and a lot of strain. And it's just not good for your thinking. It's not good for your brain. It stresses you. It not only stresses you out, but it has this effect on your brain where it's just like, it gets into that place where it's just like, you have to be perfect all the time or else they're not going to accept you. Well, no, you don't have to be perfect all the time. That is one of the biggest lies I've ever heard in my life. In my previous video, part 1 of mistakes, because this is part 1 of negative thinking, I said there is no such thing as a perfect person. There never has been and there never will be. Okay? Now let's move on to number 6. Consider the consequences. What are the short-term and long-term consequences if you continue to think like this? Look at the physical, psychological, professional, and emotional consequences. What are you doing? Are you doing damage to your self-esteem if you continue to think like this? Or will your negativity affect the relationships and possibly your health? And and you will become exhausted from this. This is something that is not everybody does. Not everybody does this. It doesn't come naturally to everybody to, like, think about the consequences of what their actions or what their thinking is. Sorry. But to break it down into layman's terms, this is something that has to be considered to be able to get to that process of starting to turn it around. We have to get to that contemplation stage, because if we're not at that contemplation stage, we're at the pre-contemplation stage, which is up here, where it's like, we don't know, or we deny whether or not we have a problem. But then we come down to here to the contemplation stage, where it's just like, okay, we have a problem, we have an addiction. Why is this? This is part of the negative thoughts, the depression, the anxiety that we have to think of, And the sooner we do that, the sooner we can start putting in process the steps to get out of this, to turn our lives to a positive life. And it is a long process. It will not happen overnight. It is something that we have to stick to. It is something that we have to do. Right. Let's move on to number 7. Alternative thinking. The previous steps were to help you understand your thinking and lower your defenses. Now that you've considered the facts, write down a healthier way of thinking. Now, the example that I have here is, I don't have to succeed at everything. I can learn from my mistakes. I'm not a failure. I want to get rid of this negative thinking. I'm being hard on myself. This is one of the 4 steps to actually start you off on the process of changing that negativity, changing it into something that can be, that'll help you to turn your life around and just to be a ray of sunshine and to be happy. We will still face those sorts of things when they come up, but just remember to do this. We can't always be happy 24/7. It is like physically impossible to be happy 24/7. Next step. Step number 8. Positive belief and affirmation. Write down a statement that reflects your healthier beliefs. Find something that you can repeat to yourself. For example, a mistake is not a failure. I am successful in many ways. This is a really good positive statement to have, because a lot of this type of a lot of negative thinking does lead to you thinking that you're a failure, and it leads to, again, the addiction, the depression, the anxiety. It does lead to this. It's not the leading cause. Yes, it is the leading cause, but you need to ask yourself this: do you want to stay here, or do you want to affirm yourself and believe that you can get out of this, that your mistake is not a failure, but you are successful in so many other ways? Now, you might not see your successfulness sometimes, but I can assure you that everybody in the world is successful at something. So yeah. There's also an affirmation. It's called the Serenity Affirmation. Now remember, I got this off the website that I will link into the description below. Grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can find, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, isn't that a powerful statement? Let's move on to step number 9 while we're at it. Make an action plan. Now, I understand that a lot of people find it hard to make an action plan and stick to it, but, you have to stick to it. It'll help. What actions can you take to support your new type of thinking? The next time I make a mistake, I won't dwell on the negatives. Instead, I will choose to focus on what I can learn from my mistakes. I will remind myself of past successes. What are some of the past successes that you've had that can actually help you to make an action plan? Alright, let's move on to number 10. Improvement. Do you feel slightly better or more optimistic? more optimistic. This step reinforces the idea that if you change your thinking, you will change your mood. Gradually over time, your thinking and life will begin to improve. Following these 10 steps will help you to improve your thought process into a positive thought process. If you write a thought record every day for a few weeks, you'll begin to change your thinking. You'll spot negative thinking quickly and you'll be able to let it go. You'll come up with better alternatives. You'll practice your healthier way of thinking and incorporate it into your life. All this information that I have given you today, and this is the best information that I have found, is from cognitive-therapy-guide.org. Thank you guys, and thank you for listening to this video, and I hope you get a lot out of it. If you like this video, please leave me a thumbs up or subscribe if you want more videos and if you want to follow the series. Also, leave me a comment down below if you would like me to cover any particular topics. Thank you.